Hello and welcome to Feedback on the week of January 18th, now premiering on our different day, Wednesday. It's like Thursday, but 24 hours earlier. And we're joined again by regularity. We have Patrick Klepek,
Hello.
Abby Heppy, and Sterling McGarvey.
Howdy.
Recently off of his Dark Void review, which we will be getting to a little bit later in the show. But first, so Patrick, it's at MPD time, but this is the big special MPD one because A, we get some sense of what the year was like, and you get a sense of, how those Christmas sales really, they start in November, but then you really see if there's any sort of, momentum or consistency into December.
Yeah, it's Christmas was pretty much huge across the board for everyone, which is good for the industry given that by and large 2009 was a sluggish year for the industry, and 2008 was huge. That was really hard for the industry to top. So 2009, because the economic troubles hitting everyone, did hit games, but the last couple November and December were huge. I mean, the Wii sold 3.81 million units in December alone, which is the single largest console sales month in history. Now, this is 3-4 years after this machine is launched, and it's its largest month ever.
Does anyone not own one now?
I know. I mean, this is the thing. Now, granted, we always scratch our heads about the DS because... Yep. But at the very least, at least there's these strange iterations of the DS. The Wii hasn't changed.
No, and even the DS has now outsold the Game Boy Advance. Like the DS is continuing to. I mean, the DS sold 3.31 million. Again, who the hell is buying these machines?
It is quite amazing.
I bought a DS during Christmas for my niece.
I'm
one of those people.
Was she upgrading, or did she never have one?
She never had one. I bought her a DS Lite for Christmas.
And
she could finally
how old is she?
play. She is 10.
See, now this is one of the things I've always kind of assumed about the DS is that children grow into
like a
the
coming
DS.
of age. It's like you are old enough to own one now. It's like sort of a persistent gadget. Like you get an iPod, you get a DS.
It's like a Moyle comes over, he gives you your DS. There's a little bit of prayer, and now you're a child. But the Wii is a little bit it's strange because it sold very strongly last year, and I thought, okay, that's the tipping out point.
But that's what everyone's been like. The moment that thing launched, everyone's been waiting for the other shoe to drop, and everyone, rightfully so, bitches about maybe the lack of games or its online connectivity. And every time the sales prove it doesn't matter to them.
Now, obviously, like the online connectivity, a lot of the beef that
we're falling apart again.
Oh no, the feedback sign came down. Now, Abby, obviously, a lot of the gripes that we have about a Wii, I think it's ridiculous to assume that the casual consumer that's clearly going for the Wii would have any cognizance of whether or not it's online, if it's hardcore or not. But what are people doing with this Wii? Because even though a lot of these games are selling well, if you look at how many Wiis there are and how much, even New Super Mario Brothers, but a big game like Wii Sports Resort, it doesn't seem to be matching up. What are people doing with these Wiis once they have them?
Well, I gave my parents one a few years ago, and honestly, not a lot. I don't feel like they ever really use it, but my mom did call me the other day because she was super excited that Netflix was going to be on it. So I just given them a Netflix subscription for Christmas. So I wonder if that's going to keep boosting Wii sales once people start realizing, again, it's like your home media entertainment center.
For like $150, which isn't too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at the sales charts for December, again, the sales charts are kind of the same every month. It's kind of the same games are always in the top 5, and they're always Nintendo products. But you look at New Super Mario Brothers, Wii Fit Plus, Wii Sports Resort, and then you jump down to 6 and 7. It's Wii Play with remote, Mario Kart with a wheel. There are just games that when you buy a Wii, so it's almost like there is probably a thought argument that Wii people aren't buying new games, but when you buy
the Wii,
when you look, because the Wii sold 3.81 million, and then they also sold 2.82 million copies of New Super Mario Brothers. It's almost like when you buy a Wii, there's a handful of things you buy. You buy Mario Kart, you buy New Super Mario Brothers, you buy Wii Play because you get the extra remote, and you buy Wii Fit because maybe your mom wants to go on the balance board.
And which is also one of the things that my family bought for it. And I think after the game told my mom she was older than she was in the initial testing, she never played it again.
Yeah, I think Nintendo's acknowledged that was bad.
And it's the attach rate. It's just, of course, because as you pointed out, all of those games either much come with a system or just like an impulse. When I'm buying my Wii, I buy that game.
That's what you get. That's what you saw at your friend's place. Like,
any
I
of
had
them
fun with
ever
that, so I
get
need to
played
get that.
again is a question.
And don't forget, the other thing with Wii Fit is that besides the fact they're not differentiating whether that's Wii Fit Plus with balance board or not, because if you just buy the game alone, it's only $20. So that's kind of belying the fact that in addition to the people who've already spent their money on the first Wii
Which
Fit,
was a lot.
yeah, which was quite a bit. It was quite a few people who bought that. There's other people popping out $20 for it here, and the other people who are buying a Wii and getting the balance board all at once. It all combines.
Because Wii Play alone has sold over 30 million copies.
yeah,
That's
The
the
number
one.
one best-selling game of all time.
Now, remember, we
an
all thought that like, a
add-on.
lot of that success was predicated on the fact that it had the extra remote in it, and that
Yeah.
was during a time when it was still quite hard to get extra remotes.
Yeah.
That is really not. We're flush with remotes
But
everywhere
now,
you
but now
go.
it's institutionalized. Like, you know that when you get a Wii, you get a Wii Play, so you get the remotes, and you get some mini games that you get to screw around with. It's just
Yeah, it's a kind of a why not? Sure,
Yeah.
I'll just get the remote. Good, it comes
because it's like
with
what
some
$10
extra-
more,
Yeah.
like, and you get some mini games.
Now, back to your point, because I think there's something so valid to it that, we're seeing most of these game sales are happening with the Wii purchase. And this goes back to what I keep on thinking is going to happen, but hasn't. It's not so much just the topping out of the sales of the Wii, but this is not, in my mind, a very strong business model that, these game systems do kind of require a longevity of relationship with it so they can have those game sales. And obviously, if they're making their money on the hardware and so much of it on the hardware, they can't relaunch this hardware to a casual audience anytime soon and expect to pull in anything like these sales. I mean, do you see something on the horizon where Nintendo is finally have to go, hold on, this isn't going to be able to maintain itself?
Well, I mean, the dropped, the reason the whole price cut occurred in like August and September was, predicated on the fact that the sales were, slowing compared to what the Wii was selling before. It was still selling, far and above what the other platforms were doing. But yeah, I mean, eventually they are gonna hit a saturation point. And, if you look at what Microsoft has been doing, they're not doing the same numbers as what Nintendo's doing, but they have a very hardcore evangelical base that's willing to go to bat with them with things like Facebook, Twitter, Netflix. The reason I turn on my 360 every day is because of Netflix, and we'll get to stuff like that later. But that's what they need. They need to start figuring out, and Nintendo has always blamed poor hardware sales on poor software. And pretty soon the hardware argument's gonna run out, and they need to figure out what to do on the software
Well,
front.
they have, out of all the systems, they have the easiest hardware upgrade, which is HD.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would sell just as much. Their problem is their business model is killing third party development and is killing anybody who wants to make third party. And the interesting thing is that I see like a weird comparison between Sony and Nintendo, which is that what people buy for that system tends to be the first party. With Sony, I think the best games just tend to be first party, and same with Nintendo. But for Wii, oh my God, it's killing. I think people go to things like Facebook for their casual games, and since the Wii is a basis for a lot of casual games, I think that just kills all the third party ones for that, and then you have these really spectacular releases for not maybe some of these.
I think it's also
if you're going to have them, the Zelda and the Metroid, those are awesome big,
they're massive brands, and like that's the thing is that brands matter so much on the Wii because with so much software, when you go to look at the shelf, if you're buying a Mario game, you're probably getting a pretty good game.
And why is someone going to buy a third party more casual title for the Wii when they can go on Facebook and play stupid freaking Farmville all day?
And also,
that's
usually
kinda
they're already
where,
on their PC at work or somewhere else.
I think that's kind of one of the situations third party, even now, still haven't quite got it figured out because we've looked at the whole failure of M-rated games, which was, that was a reaction to, oh my God, the Wii's selling really well. 2 years later, here's the fruits of everything.
Do you think there is
then.
something to figure out, or do you just think, because I don't think there is. I think that they're just going to get killed. I just don't think that.
But also,
that
you don't see much support from Nintendo. I mean, we've seen those ads for third-party games that might be exclusive to a PS3 or even not exclusive to a PS3 or a 360, and then you see the Microsoft or the Sony branding coming at the ad at the end of the ad for the game. You don't see anything of that sort happening from Nintendo. That you don't get that. Hey, we're developing it just for the Wii. Can we get some of your marketing muscle behind this as well?
They don't want to cannibalize their own games to support other ones.
And you know what this reminds me of? The whole problems with the cartridges back in the day. It's very interesting how they went through the GameCube and got really, really contrite, especially with their third-party guys. Now they're back on top again, and it's kind of like the same old story happening for the third time over. Let's go to, I think, what's even more interesting is it was good performance from both the 360 and the PS3, but the PS3 edged out the 360, I think, for the first time ever.
Well, no, I mean for December it's really impressive. When they did the price cut, they were able to edge them out a little bit. But it is for them to maintain this momentum, which is so important, and that Sony has called 2009 a turning point. I think they also called 2008 a turning point.
Yeah.
But I think
It's a big circle. That's the thing. They constantly are turning.
So really, it's a solid argument. But yeah, I mean, for them, it's a really big PR victory for them to win out in December, even if it's only by a couple of 100,000 units, and that could easily flip in the next couple of months. Just to have taken December is big for them, especially because December was an 87% increase over the year before. I mean, the Xbox 360 sold 10 million units in 2009. PS3 only sold 4.2, but it's their momentum that's important.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's and that's where Microsoft, has this very hardcore base, but they need to, things like Natal need to expand the audience. While Sony is very quickly catching up, and they're going to have an equal base eventually. It's just a matter of who can take it from that to a larger audience, and it's a race to see who can do that first.
And right now, that momentum seems to be working in their favor when you look at God of War 3, that's hanging right there. And of course, you have a smaller game like Heavy Rain, but they do have like this nice big linchpin, which, Alan Wake is probably the first release we're going to see out of Microsoft, and my gut's telling me we're not going to see that till probably the latter part of the first half of the year.
Well, and that's been, weirdly or not weirdly, in that, Microsoft didn't have a very big first-party game last fall. They put all, and Microsoft admitted this to me when I interviewed, their product manager, Aaron Greenberg, that we put our bet on Call of Duty. We didn't put out a first-party game in the fall because that didn't make sense. Call of Duty was our first-party game. We put our marketing muscle behind that.
Yes,
they
they
did partnerships.
And yes,
and
you
they
could
did,
tell. It was
and they
all
did,
over
and
it.
I think smartly so. And that, look at, Mass Effect is going to be the same way. That's an exclusive game for the Xbox 360 that Microsoft
That's true.
not
I keep on
putting
forgetting
out.
that it's not on the PS3, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
And that seems to be their way of kind of plugging the holes, is that they have these first party games every couple of months, and they use exclusive third party stuff to sort of fill in those
And
gaps.
then they also have Left 4 Dead 2, which is out on PC but doesn't hit PS3.
Let's look at a comment from user XPS360X. I think this is, as you pointed to, bragging rights. 3 words to say: PS3 outsold 360. I guess really
Yes,
is this this shot in the arm that these fanboys who, more or less, if I give another 5 out of 5 to Killzone 3, am I going to have them crawling up my ass again? Or can the success of the PS3 in the past month finally placate this insipid, rivalry that's going on online?
Hardly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had
I
a feeling.
don't see it happening. I mean, to be honest, it's just a few 100,000 units. Don't get me wrong. What I'd really like to see is, as time goes on, for Sony to build momentum so that people can afford 2 consoles, maybe even all 3, so that people can stop warring over this kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
that'd
to
be
be
nice.
honest, I'm happy to see that Sony's building the momentum. I'm happy to hear that a lot of my friends back east said, oh yeah, I've had a 360 forever. This is the Christmas I finally bought a PS3. Therefore, I can finally get online with more of them. Just growing the audience, growing the install base can only be good for all of us.
And growing the quality of their games. I mean, I think it's
Absolutely.
no coincidence when they suddenly had this wonderful output of very solid creative titles is when the PS3 also started to see this big uptick in terms of their sales. Hopefully they're correlated, or at least I hope they don't realize, if they're not, that they think it is and they just make good games still.
Well, Uncharted 2 was going into the holiday season with, accolades from everyone behind it. And, God of War is just... Right.
It's God of War.
Oh, God, I want it so much.
Yeah, it's kind of like some saying, "Hey, I'm coming home, honey," but there's traffic and like they can't make it home. It's God of War is just the relative I haven't seen for a while.
Yeah, I mean, and again, even though I use my 360 far more than I use my PS3, I want the PS3 to be more competitive, because that means Microsoft gets more competitive and Nintendo gets more competitive. More sales
exactly.
is better for everyone. So I would rather everyone be
Yes,
on even
I
footing
agree.
and fighting for my dollars, rather than somebody just being in the lead and being able to dictate
Which
whatever
is
they want.
probably going to be happening this year. I mean, Natal, I think we'd all be very silly to think that Microsoft, does not plan to do something very big in terms of, getting word out about this. And obviously they're going up against Sony, which I hope Sony does very, very well with the motion control, but usually these new things tend to kind of confuse them a little bit. But
I heard very mixed things at CES, so
You did.
We'll see.
All right. Well,
And the other point of contention is, using the online service for free versus paying through Microsoft's, and wondering
And
if that will
there's-
ever spur some competition into making
Well,
Microsoft.
it sounds like
drop their
we're
prices
probably
on
going to
it,
see
or-
the premium tier PSN this year, and we'll see what that is and
If it
what
works.
Yeah.
now, if it does work, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, my God, it's just if they're going to have people pay and they have something that still has all those weird kinks and strangeness of the PSN as we know it now, that will be very disappointing. Let's look at the one thing which was very nice to see. 2 games that did make the top 10 that weren't from the Wii and did not have Call of Duty in their title, Assassin's Creed 2, this is the franchise that just keeps on surprising me. I thought it was a fluke it did so well 2 years ago because the economy wasn't bad, and I thought they had an uphill battle, but no. They made it into the top 10.
Again,
positive word of mouth. I don't know. I mean, I love it. And
it's a great game.
It's just remarkable given the setting. I think is really the thing that always sort of surprises us is that people, we love it because we're always begging for somewhere different for games to take place,
right.
but for the, everyday consumer to embrace that so much.
It's also a lot of bang for your buck. I mean,
that is definitely true.
I've already beaten it. I'm still going back, finding every little feather, and there's just a ton of stuff to do. It's like the games like that are perfect for a recession. Yeah, if you want to spend your time and really have a long, and great experience playing a game, there's no reason not to get Assassin's Creed.
And the other game is it's Left 4 Dead 2. I mean, I thought once again that this game might also have a little bit of trouble just because
coming so quickly.
Exactly, it's coming so quickly after the other one, and that some people in it, if they only have so many dollars, they might want some variety.
But then you have a company that has a very, very strong fan base and a ton of advertising dollars behind that. I don't know how many buses I've counted in LA that are just Left 4 Dead buses, billboards. I mean, they hit their base fan, their fan base that's pretty huge, and then their just advertising is just hammering it home.
Yeah.
Let's read a comment from Dantastic4. He says, not surprised at all that new Super Mario Bros. Wii had great holiday sales. When you have something as iconic and classic as Mario and have old school gameplay, which most gamers in their 30s that are now parents, it's a surefire hit. I think Mario's an easy sell. Obviously, it was the number one game at 2.82 million in the month of December. I'm trying to remember, how does this stack up against Galaxy?
See, that's the thing is that it's an easy sell. Mario's a guaranteed million, but Galaxy didn't sell nearly what New Super Mario Brothers did, and I think that is largely because of the perspective. I think that's a very comforting thing for a lot of people to see sort of an old school Mario, and that's very encouraging. I mean, Mario Galaxy sold well, but it didn't sell 2.8 million in 1 month.
Do you think it might have to do with the saturation of the install base as well, though? I mean, when Mario Galaxy came out, you still couldn't find Wiis, and it was only a year old, whereas now
that's a good point.
A cajillion people now own a Wii, so it's easier to just, the install base who's picked it up over the years automatically says, oh, I want new Super Mario Brothers, whereas people at the store, it's just something else you tack on.
What about the co-op? I mean, assuming it's a family console, it's like, if I buy this, both the kids can play it rather than they're going to fight over who's going to play it.
The less I say about the co-op, the better, personally.
Oh, I'm not saying the co-op's good. But
which is bizarre considering that me, my girlfriend, and Andrew played through 6 worlds of Super Mario Brothers Wii over the weekend and had a complete blast.
Wow.
3 players is the best combination. Because if you have 2 people, you get frustrated at the other person when they screw up. If you have 4 people, it's too chaotic. With 3 people, you can actually have a balance. I recommend 3.
Okay.
So we're playing 6
Fair
worlds.
enough.
But Abby, you were saying about the co-op.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you're right. I think you look at it and you say, family can play it. But at the same time, the point that this person raised is valid. I can still tell my dad, there's a new Super Mario Brothers, and he's excited and he knows how to play it.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the thing. Is there's no I don't really know how this is going to play out. There's just I know how to sit there and play this game.
It's A, B, left, right.
I jump on the turtle. Cool. Yeah, that's all you really need to know. And S.H. Moran, I think, echoes Abby perfectly. Does that mean that almost everyone in the U.S. has a DS? My God, that thing sells like crazy every month. What are the overall sales for the DS?
I believe it's at around 38 million, because that's 38.8, I believe, is what the Game Boy Advance's saturation point was.
Right.
So we're almost at 40 million.
And how many people live in the United States?
Over 300 million.
Yeah. Okay, so we really actually have 10% of the population of the U.S. So
it's still.
I guess there's room to grow there.
There is. Nintendo dominance.
Yeah.
That's the term.
I'm surprised how well. And this is my pet theory that Mario and Luigi for the DS, which Bowser's Inside Story is a great game, but how many of those people were actually aware that's an RPG?
They
I don't
probably
know.
were not.
Yeah.
656,000 people bought that game knowing it was an RPG. I don't buy that.
Mario is safe, and
that's what I think.
And also, if I'm the GameStop employee and you're pushing a game, all you have to say is Mario, and any parent goes, well,
That's
it
safe.
clearly doesn't have something wrong with it. It's like Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, I mean, the DS has so much shovelware that again, you're looking at another platform, much like the Wii, where the third-party games aren't always as sellable as the first party ones. And I mean, that said, I play an awful lot of third party, DS games, but I just think when your average consumer who buys that system walks into the, stop, you go for what's comfortable and what you know.
Yeah.
No, which makes complete sense. It's, like going into a restaurant and ordering food you've never heard of before.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
know that is probably going to be good versus, a game that maybe you don't know as much about and you to be
And then you
taking
just
a chance
wasted
on.
$50.
Well,
Yeah.
especially when, the economy, when the economy's bad, like, would you rather take a gamble on the game that you don't really
can't
know?
and you can't
or do you
return
want to or do you want to get the one that you just know is going to be awesome?
Yeah, makes
Boom.
sense. All right. MPD is behind us. We can't wait for a month from now when we can talk about them in January. So Xbox Live, we were just talking about. Obviously, this is one of the more dominant aspects to Microsoft. ESPN sounds like they might get involved.
Yeah, there was a report out of the New York Times that Microsoft and ESPN are currently discussing bringing. I don't have a whole lot of experience with the service, but I guess it's called ESPN 360. I think Sterling has touched on it, and it's essentially a live streaming service that brings certain sports that you could. Apparently watch on your 360 sometime down the line, which falls in line with a lot of what Microsoft has done with other things, Facebook, Twitter, and, everyone wants Hulu. And so essentially it would be, adding on to this service they already have, but bringing in sports and live streaming TV, which is, they've done TV in Europe, but it's a lot easier because of the more of a consolidation in Europe than it is attempting to do that in America. So I think it's interesting, and I think people would be excited about it. I know Sterling was already talking it up. In the office.
Is it ESPN programming, or is it like a live feed from where they have cameras?
So generally the way it works is ESPN 360 brings you just different sports. You can watch replays. You can watch like a replay of a match or a game if you've already missed it, or you can watch it live streaming. So I'm a huge soccer fan.
Right.
It's easy for me to keep up with a match when they're airing at like 6 o'clock in the morning West Coast time. I can get up later on, stay off the internet for spoilers, and like watch a game. The problem for me personally, AT&T is my DSL provider, and they subsidize ESPN 360. But my stream doesn't look that good. I watch my stuff on a netbook. If I want to hook it up to my TV, it looks like crap.
Okay.
The portability is a big issue because you have to go through this sort of like unlock and permissions if I want to watch at the office. This would make things a lot easier. It would give me one central location where I could watch my streaming sports whenever I want to, and that's really what's got me excited about this.
Now, could you watch it picture-in-picture so that you could play your video game and watch it at the same time?
If they could do that with Last FM, I'd be so thrilled.
Like, manliest console ever.
That's a pretty cool idea.
I'm not joking. I think that would be a great idea. I don't watch as much sports as Sterling does, but if I could watch the little, I've actually thought about that for well, maybe not movies doesn't work as well, but sports works.
Sports is cool.
Apparently, Osu Blue Jacket might feel differently. He says, while I am a big sports fan, I don't think I'd pony up for this, at least not until I hear more details. On the flip side, Netflix is one of the only reasons my fiance likes the 360 and console/games in general. I think this is more what this news speaks to is where Microsoft seems to be developing quite a bit of genius is they have now made this Trojan horse, and that's how I'm very excited for Natal, but what I think really kind of gets me about it is that system got in the house with the hardcore person. Mm-hmm. And they keep on expanding it so it has this functionality for everyone else in the house. And each one of those things carries a fee, or at least an Xbox Live subscription. And it's not insidious or pernicious, but it's very, very clever what seems to be happening. And
it is actually.
It's a little bit insidious considering that you're paying a subscription fee to access content you already paid.
But it's ease of use. I mean, it's because look, there's something about that Netflix where it's like I could wait 2 days, or I could just watch it here right now.
That's one of the things, going back to the PS3, getting more consumers is that's what I'm hoping that Sony catches on that Microsoft's doing very smartly is in integrating these social services, because it does frustrate me that even though I'm going to be paying for an Xbox Live account every year, it does irk me that I'm already paying a Netflix fee that I can access all of that content for free on my computer, probably through my iPhone eventually. I can access it for free through my PS3 and my Wii, but I'm paying for an interface on my Xbox 360. I think that's something that Sony could make a lot of inroads on in terms of establishing these social networking services and saying, look, you're already paying for those. Why should you have to pay a fee on top of that? But I do think Microsoft is so far ahead of the game on this.
I know, that's the thing.
That it's almost rendered irrelevant because I'm already, even though it's cool I can request a disc for my PS3, I'm already doing it every day on my Xbox. I don't see any reason to switch.
I mean, that's the thing, is that they own that narrative. Every single time there's this new type of, some social networking that's ending up on the 360, they get to claim the story, and Sony's always just playing the game of catch up, and it just, no one's really picking up on that. Let's talk about the third one. This is very dear to my heart. I think a few of you in here too.
Oh, yeah.
The game that we're all excited about that we don't expect to play anytime soon, Beyond Good and Evil 2.
It's apparently, hasn't been mentioned in any of Ubisoft's like financial write-ups for like the past year and a half, but they did come out and confirm that the game is still in development. They said we have no further comment, which, who knows what the hell that means, but if anyone, if you remember that trailer that leaked about a year ago, which looked unfreaking believable.
I don't believe it leaked. I believe that this
That
was
was at
No,
the
this
press
was the leaked
conference.
one. Yeah, not the original one where it was announced.
Oh.
The one where we saw the
Right.
really incredible platforming, like it was.
Yeah.
That was not officially sanctioned. It was kind of like they sort of just said, well, yeah, that's something we're working on. But it looks incredible. And yeah, I don't care when it comes. I don't know if it comes next year, if it comes 3 years from now, as long as eventually we get that game, like a proper new Ansel game. Like
Yes.
that I am just super excited for that.
And actually, if they could do kind of a high def job on the original, like they did say for God
God,
of War
yes.
collection,
Oh,
that
that
would
would be
just make,
great.
because visually it may not have the fidelity of games now, but Beyond Good and
aesthetic
Evil,
holds up.
it's the same I felt about Rayman 2. It's like that is the kind of world I want to fall into. It's just it has enough danger and mystery, but then that charm all at the same time.
I like that we get just as excited about new games coming out as we do that it'll mean that somebody might redo the original game and then put it up there for us.
Which goes back to the lazy I was talking about.
Yeah.
I don't want to haul out my old Xbox or PS2 and then slap
No.
that disc in. I
I have so many cords and cables running to my TV. If I have to hook up anything
Yeah.
else, like aside from that, like every time now I turn on my like hot water heater, like maker, the lights in my apartment dim. So any excuse not to have to plug anything in anymore is probably good.
I will
Oh,
give
Abby,
you-
you
I
have
will
the
give you
cutest
money.
lean-to in all of Los Angeles.
You have no idea how many things. Just I have like a power
Fire
projector,
hazard
like
waiting to
every
happen.
single outlet. Yeah.
Patrick, quickly, also there's some news about I Am Alive, which
Yeah,
is
the game we saw, was it at E3 last year or the year before? I don't know. We've seen very, very little on this I Am Alive game that is supposed to be this, not post-apocalyptic, but I guess post-destruction. And it was supposed to be set in Chicago. Haven't heard anything about the game. We kind of all assumed it was canceled, but apparently it's been handed off to a new developer. It's being taken potentially out of Chicago, which is the original setting for the game. And it's being converted to the Splinter Cell Conviction engine.
which that can't be a bad thing.
No,
I mean,
that game is
I think they're going to
beautiful.
raise the bar in terms of what a game can look like, and they now need to kind of bring everything up to speed with that as well. I have to say, our Custos into Silentium.
Close enough.
Wow, that's good. I mean, I believe that is Latin, and I only had half a semester of it, so I don't know what he's saying. Great news, but the other half of me is thinking, well, Duke Nukem Forever is also still in development. That is my one concern with Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Bring down the party.
Yeah, it has crossed my mind. But anyway, let's put our news
Yeah, once
behind
you
us.
go into the realm of joke, like
Yeah.
that
We're
not
you've
at
been
joke
so long
status
in
yet. We're
development.
still within-
We're not at joke status.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michel Ancel, and then what's his face had a Frenchy name as well from 3D Realms. But
George
I think,
Broussard?
yes, Broussard. But I think that's where the similarities end. Sterling, one of the many reasons, but it's just so I can just gaze upon your lovely locks that we have you here, is that you just recently reviewed Dark Void, which is a game that I think for a hardcore base, there was something very appealing about it because we knew that Airtight Games was made up a lot of the Crimson Skies team, and the look of the game seemed to be, at least similar in spirit to that game, which is kind of just a long-loved original Xbox game. The game didn't seem to really, rub your tummy.
No, it did not.
Didn't rub the tummy.
No, it did not rub my tummy. What I love about Dark Void, and I should preface it before I go into everything else, I think that the flying controls work. Actually, they worked really well. It's just it's a learning curve to it, but once you get into it, there's a real sense of wonder to being able to cruising around and just shooting down different enemies, and there's just this soaring heights and whatnot. And Bear McCreary's score really enhances that as well. He worked on
Like that
Battlestar.
sense of wonder and
Yeah.
like, oh, adventure.
Yeah, this adventure, and it kind of for those moments, it reminds me of that that late '30s kind of vibe they were going for with Crimson Skies. It's just that everything else around it doesn't hold up so well. So once you get down to the ground,
I say
and you-
once you leave the sky,
Yeah,
isn't that
once
where the
you
game
leave-
falls apart?
pretty much. So once you're on the ground, the cover system is Gears of War diet. It doesn't work very well. You'll snap into cover, it doesn't feel right. The enemies are really generic. The only reason you want to kill any of these things is because they shot first. What else? I mean, the story just isn't
I've
particularly
heard it's actually
compelling.
kind of difficult to shoot the enemies. Like the aiming's not very precise.
The aiming's not quite right. You'll get headshots, and it feels like you're getting them out of sheer luck. It's just like mechanically, it's really clunky. It's obvious this team's strongest suit is air combat and dogfighting. It is not third-person shooter mechanic.
It seems like if they had just removed ground combat, like it didn't, you could have ground exploration, maybe some puzzle elements or platforming or something. But it seems like the combat really hurts every moment you hit the ground. You're just waiting to get back up into the sky
It's
again.
just not very exciting combat. I mean, it's standard and
No.
it works. I mean, your reticle isn't like as like pinpoint as it is in other games, which is fine. We see that happen in
You're just kind of
lots
doing like a
shooters.
spread shot just to
No,
get.
but I mean, so it's a lot harder to tell, as Sterling said, when you have a headshot or kind of what part of it that you're hitting. But it's functional. It's not awful.
I guess what just saddened me is part of what had me excited. I guess this really ties into the Crimson Skies is that the world. He's in the Bermuda Triangle. It's kind of steampunkish 1930s, and there's aliens. All of these things sounded like, in the hands of this dev team, really had the potential to kind of really have something fun and exciting as a world. But it even seems like they didn't know how to exploit that aspect of it to really kind of make a name for themselves.
No, I felt like the environments were they were rather bland. I felt like as I was going around and exploring, it wasn't so much, wow, this looks really cool, let me go over here and see what this is. It was more like, this is another corridor for me to shoot through. Here's another shooting gallery of enemies and achievement unlocked.
There was one that I liked in the beginning that I thought had potential, which is the ship that's kind of hanging off of like a mountain
the ship
cliff.
hanging off the cliff.
That was
yeah.
like actually cool. And there's parts in it where I don't think that necessarily the the environments that you're in are anything special, but the way your perspective shifts when you all of a sudden start climbing up something and doing the vertical cover is pretty cool.
I thought the vertical cover, for everything that they touted about it, was kind of disappointing. I felt like all it made me think of was there were a few moments of Gears of War 2 where I would run down some long stretch and there would be a bunch of locusts 50 feet away. And I felt like all it was perspective shift. So it was the same kind of clunky cover, but instead I'm aiming farther away down a more narrow corridor.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but I thought that kind of added perspective, brings something to the game that's at least interesting. I mean, for me, the flying was kind of awkward, and I had trouble with it, and it was a matter of like reminding myself, just don't touch the frickin' right thumbstick. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is a pain.
What
And
does
even in
the
the
right
beginning,
thumbstick
though,
do?
in the very
It rotates
beginning when
the
they start you
camera.
off, that dog fighting was not fun.
No.
That was frustrating and that was hard, and I wasn't sure how everything was controlling yet. And I'm back into another part like that where I'm just trying to fly out of somewhere that's more narrow. And the flying is fun when you're in a really open space, but when you're in like a tight little thing that you have to escape,
reminds me
holy
of swimming.
crap, is it
Yeah, you're
frustrating?
like, no.
Every
Around.
time I've seen someone playing one of
Yeah.
these sequences, and to be fair, I have not got my hands on this game. I've been reviewing this very, very big game that's coming out soon. Is that it reminds me of like some of the worst of the Zelda swimming dungeons.
Swimming,
that,
but
you
faster. You're moving faster
Right,
than
but-
that, which is extra
And
frustrating.
you don't have a good sense of where you're supposed to be going. You can get disoriented so quickly that it just becomes a little bit tiresome. I want to read a comment from Soundwave _Butcher. I like that. He said, Uncharted has spoiled us a bit too much. I don't know if I necessarily agree with him, but this is an interesting point that I don't want to call it the adventure game. Let's call it the adventure action game. The stuff that I think this falls into is similar kind of in spirit and stuff like that with Uncharted. Is there a gold standard that, we're going to now almost are forced to kind of hold other games that sort of fit thematically into Uncharted? Do we have to hold them together just the same way that, say, like when Dark Sector came out? It was very hard to discuss Dark Sector without Gears of War coming into the conversation.
I think so, and I think we said that as soon as Uncharted came out, that it sucks to be other developers because I don't think we would necessarily hold it against the game that it's not as
No,
good as
no,
Uncharted.
no,
but,
no.
But when you do have that out there, I mean, they raised the bar so high, and other people need to start shooting for that.
Yeah. And on a very superficial level, there's some similarities between Dark Void and
yeah.
Yeah, I
Uncharted
was gonna
2.
Nolan North.
It doesn't help when you
Nolan
have
North.
Nolan
No.
North as
And
your
the,
star.
That's
and the
unfortunate.
woman who looks kind of vaguely like Chloe and also like
Has a British,
Australian.
Chloe's Australian. No, this actress is British. I think she's one of the actresses on Rome, actually.
Yeah, it
Polly
just
Walker.
sounded similar enough that I'm like, oh hey, look, it's.
I didn't realize it was Nolan North. That is an unfortunate coincidence.
Yeah, it's a very
and-
unfortunate.
If I have any
coincidence.
recommendation for developers of 2010, I mean, I love Nolan North, but stop putting him in every
Just
action
let him
game.
do a different voice. I'm sure he's got more.
Or
of
a
them.
different character. But I think this also works is that I think one of the things that really, really did set Uncharted 2 apart is, yes, those characters are archetypes, but they were treated well enough that they kind of stand apart from the more cookie-cutter characters that Nolan North has lent his voice to so many times in the past and probably will do so going forward.
I may have
into the
recommended it.
future.
I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Thank you very much for sort of keeping us abreast on Dark Void and for playing it and reviewing it and all that stuff. I want to move on to one of our questions of the week. This is from Chris Hero 22, and it's about the future of adult games. With a growing trend of more adult games on the horizon for seemingly all consoles, do you think we as gamers in the gaming industry is finally going to see some backlash and consequences for the type of content that children have been exposed to in these more adult games? I'm having a hard time figuring out what he means by adult.
Hasn't that been a problem for a while?
I mean, yeah, this seems to be. I think what Chris Hero is getting at is that with games getting this much more mainstream,
Mainstream and realistic.
and we have Call of Duty coming out. A lot of the stuff that's kind of like really gotten people's attention. Are we going to see any more backlash? And I personally, I think no, because I thought Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was going to do that with no Russian. It was so easy to misinterpret that sequence, and there was a little bit of a flare for a few days, and nothing since then.
largely passed by. I'll be more curious, not so much the backlash. 'Cause I think we're seeing less and less of that. I think I almost felt like we should have seen that with Call of Duty, and we didn't. I don't know if it just missed or if it wasn't interesting enough. But it will be as developers start pushing more and more into the sort of taboo areas for video games, where different developers start to draw the line. Because I think that's going to be really interesting to see. BioWare has been very pushing the boundaries in terms of sex and incorporating the games. It sounds like
Sexuality more than sex, yeah.
Heavy Rain, I think, is going to be an interesting
Yes.
test case, especially how interactive any of those sequences may be. And I think it's going to be interesting to see where developers start saying, you know what, we're uncomfortable doing that. Because we're going to see more and more of that as each developer pushes forward a little bit more. But where different developers start drawing the line on violence, where they start drawing the line on sex, because those are things that people are now going to feel like they can do. And then where do they say, well, we don't feel comfortable putting that in our game?
Well, I mean, if Modern Warfare 2 is any barometer, parents have stopped complaining about violent video games to their kids and are now just buying them for them.
Yes, I mean, that's the...
I guess this issue just always frustrates the hell out of me because, there's a reason that we have an ESRB. There's a reason that there's, some sort of internal oversight over it. And at the end of the day, the only, the problem is that parents just keep buying these, buying this stuff for their kids.
Let's look here. I mean, he says consequences for the type of content that children have been exposed to in these more adult games.
Have been exposed to, which means somebody.
Well, but the other thing is there that much exposure coming out of games than the internet? Than movies. I mean, I think that's the thing. I chuckle to myself about the movies I was able to get my hands on, when I was 11 and 12. I actually don't think I'm a worse guy for it. But I mean, the fact is that games are just sort of the new stuff that's out there, and that they're on the whole, really, guys, they're less adult than what I've seen in movies, and definitely less adult than some websites that I've cut on the internet. It's just
you just happened
across.
One day I'm walking down a bad alley there on the international webnet.
I think
it's because they're called games.
Well, it's that, and then parents give not being a parent, but based on my experience with parents, they get frustrated over things they don't understand. And with games, I think by and large, they just don't understand them. They can't just sit down and they can't, they're not going to sit and watch their kid play a game for 12 hours to understand the content or say, this is when you should turn it off. Yeah. And as much as the ESRB gives you explanations of what's going on, I think the website has become a much more powerful tool in terms of they just now spoil everything in the game. Yeah. Rightfully so, as they should, I think, so that you have a better understanding of the content. But I just don't think enough parents do the due diligence to check that out. And so what you always see in terms of consequence or backlash is just after the fact. When
Yeah.
really
It sounds more like guilt. Like, oh no, I'm going
I
to be called
should
a
have
bad
known that.
parent. I must quickly run and find a defense. It's your fault, Mr. Game Developer.
exactly.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our second one. I think I might let the show run a little bit long so we can get a few more comments in. I love this discussion. It's called "Is Linearity a Bad Thing?" And this is from A Bittersweet Life. Oh, it's an Ann Tyler fan, isn't it?
And this is also stems out of, if you haven't read the excellent post-mortem interview feature that Andrew Pfister did with Evan Wells at Naughty Dog about Uncharted, and this kind of spun off into a little thing on the internet, and now we're bringing it back to feedback.
So he says, guys, I don't understand. Since when did being a linear game become a bad game? Nobody emailed me, called me, or even texted me on this. Even now, there's still a debate going on whether Uncharted 2 really deserved to be the best game of 2009. Yes, Uncharted 2 has a predetermined path, a somewhat predictable story, as they say, but incredibly fun nonetheless. Is telling a story in a linear way in games today showing its age or even outdated? Is non-linearity the way to go?
I didn't get the memo either, so
Yeah.
I happen to really like linear
Yeah.
games.
Yeah,
a
I
lot
get
of the time.
memos. I ignore them like spam.
But he is right though in thinking that somehow linearity has become a pejorative. And Sterling, you were mentioning something as to where you think the source of this came from.
I think it comes from past game reviews dinging games for being too linear, as though that was some sort of a bad thing. You know, maybe to circle back, I don't want to sit around and waste a bunch of time criticizing how other people criticize.
But this is something that I have seen in games, I would say in the past 8 years.
Well, I mean,
But
just once games like Grand Theft Auto introduced the idea of a sandbox or non-linear gameplay, it sort of, for a little while, has become sort of an expected feature in games as opposed to being an option for design. And so there was, I think, it's kind of like, it's the same, you see that in criticism with multiplayer, like, why doesn't this game have multiplayer? And then you see a bunch of games incorporate multiplayer that
and then
doesn't
you
need
say,
it.
why is there multiplayer?
And then I think it's the same sort of gut reaction. We saw how fun non-linearity can be, so it's like, why shouldn't every game be like this? And then now you're starting to see it come full circle as we see games that really embrace linearity, like
Because
Uncharted
it's still
2.
the most effective way to tell a story.
Exactly.
I think one of the best
Yeah.
examples of where the narrative suffers due to the lack of linearity is the Prince of Persia redo from a couple of years ago, and even to a lesser extent, the original Assassin's Creed, where there was no sense of narrative thrust during the point when you can do anything at any time, all of those things have to be able to work in any order, and so you lose any sense of urgency or knowledge, and it's not once everything ties back together again and you're trapped in the narrative that suddenly that sense of consequence starts to actually come out of the game itself. I think it's a trade-off between games. I mean, my favorite part of Fallout 3, which is about as non-linear as you can get, is not the main story. It was just me
side quests were
exploring.
so
So it's
engaging.
what you want out of the game.
Well, and I think
totally.
what
And I
is-
tend to play in a very linear way. You know, even in sandboxy games like Grand Theft Auto or Assassin's Creed, I kind of like rush through and do everything because take time on the side maybe to go find something or do one. But I like having that narrative thrust of the story, and I like knowing what I'm doing the whole way through. I think, what was it, like Final Fantasy X? I played like 80 hours into it, and then it's like, now you can go back through the world and just do all these other random little things. And I was like,
Or you
and
can go to the final
quit.
boss.
No, I just shut off the console and I was like, I'm finished with you. God, I thought I was at the end.
What I find interesting though is that there's so many people that will sit around and talk about how, I hate linearity in games, and then they're the first one saying, day one, Modern Warfare 2. Whereas the single player
Yeah,
is
which
what people say is
incredibly
totally
linear.
linear, it's short, and it's on rails because they're directing you in this
Well,
specific
it's also-
direction.
There's something very impressive when you see a really effective open world game, Grand Theft Auto 4, Fable 2, Fallout 3. But I think what's so impressive is so right there on the surface. When you look at a game like Uncharted 2 that is so much linear, all the cool stuff is kind of under the surface. The pacing of the story, the stuff that's keeping you involved. There's artistry there that's different
Linear
and isn't
isn't
kind of
easy.
going, hey, look at me, hey, look at me. It's really not that easy.
Yeah, and I think that's what people, are sort of missing the point, is that just because you choose to be linear, if anything, especially because of games like Uncharted that were linear and so good, the expectation is that that's the bar now. Going back to Dark Void, like, if you choose to do that path, well, someone's already done that path, and they've done it really, really well.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you're going to have an open world game, your extra missions and everything have to be interesting enough
Yes.
to actually make me want to break that path and go do them.
Assassin's
Because-
Creed 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm yeah, I guess I was like, I don't really do the race missions, and
No.
I don't, there's a couple things that I don't do there, but for the most part, I liked a lot of them, and I
But
kept
it is
doing them.
Assassin's Creed 2 is a far more streamlined. Where it does allow you to branch, it's very, very restricted. Like, okay,
Yeah.
at this point, there are 3 things you're going to have to do. You can choose the order. We're getting back on the same path. It's much wiser
but
for
it's
the game.
always, and the reason it works in Fallout I think it works in Assassin's Creed 2 is like even a lot of the side stuff ties into the story or has a story element.
Sure.
So like
Yes.
whereas in Assassin's Creed 1, all the extra stuff had is
or a
nothing
benefit
to do.
it. I mean, if there's
Right.
something if there's something significant that I'm earning, if there's an interesting side story that is unfolding, if there is just a mission that's just fun, like I'm all for it. But I think for the most part, we all like that linearity more than maybe we admit to it.
No, I
mean,
love-
I think
I love- like,
because even in open world games, I think there's that certain sense of staying on the linear path and only getting off of it if it's interesting enough to divert off of it.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's not just there's a big open expanse of nothing. It's really like, wow, I just kind of did some busy work, so someone could say, look, you got more bang for your buck. I would rather, just condense my awesome into something shorter, and I think a lot of people will be happier for it. With that linearity, we have come to the linear end of our show. This is not an
look at
open
that.
world show that can go in any direction. No. Thank you guys for coming. Sterling McGarvey, Abby Happy, Patrick Klepek. Once again, if you have not figured out, we premiered on a Wednesday, and we're going to be doing that going forward into eternity. Probably past eternity, into the dark void.
No, see, that
Ooh,
sounds
look,
open
see, I tied
world.
something in. So yes, obviously, if you don't catch us on Wednesday, we're still up on the site Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you can look through the catalog. Thank you for watching. We're going to be back next week with many more fascinating things to talk about. Take care.
Like what?